I think prophecy is essential for city and national transformation. And we've seen it in our own experience here in our city of Amsterdam. When God first called us to, plant a church in the center of the city, everything we tried didn't go as we had expected. And even though I'm someone who pastors, I also have a PhD in chemistry. So I'm trained in logic. I'm trained in rational thinking. However, you cannot get around the fact today that especially in European cities, major European cities, there is a spiritual dynamic. And so as we started to pray, the Lord started to give us insight into some of the dynamics that were being used, strategies of the enemy that were being used against pastors who were doing church startups in this city. And he enabled us, because he gave us insight into that, to actually circumvent those things. And now we're thriving here. When Dick and I first got the call, and it was literally an in-your-face call to start the church, a guest speaker was speaking in the previous church that we were in. We were assistant pastors there, and he literally stopped in the middle of his sermon. He pointed to us, and he said, "Dick and Arleen, there are so many leaders in this church. What are you doing here? Get out of here and go change a city." That was a key moment for us. Why? Because Dick and I, we are wired for transformation. I need to be able to change something, otherwise I fall asleep. And so as a result, when we got that call, we knew, all right, we are here to see change come in this city. And our church, God's Embassy Amsterdam, it's meant to actually produce people who know they're ambassadors for Christ and who carry the spiritual authority to see change come and to represent their Heavenly Father well. First, we had to overcome a lot of barriers to starting in this city. A lot of things wanted to close us down. When I say things, sickness or other kinds of just problems wanted to see us closed down. We couldn't get a room to rent. Nobody wanted to rent to a church here in the city. And so as a result, Prophetic led us to the place that we were able to rent for the first 7 years of our existence. After that, the Lord started to speak about the fact that he wanted to have a base, a building that would serve as a base for the apostolic center, the Kingdom Apostolic Training Center that he was calling us to establish. And he gave us our DNA in saying that. Kingdom, meaning that we have to have a vision that is bigger than the four walls of this church. We have to have a vision that says we are here to see change come in this city. Apostolic, we are ascending center. And that doesn't mean missions only abroad, even though we have a lot of missionaries abroad, but we're here to see people saved, healed, delivered, equipped, so that we can send them out to also bring change in every sphere of influence in society. And that is starting to happen, and it's such a cool dynamic. And so prophecy has played an essential role in that area, but also, even just in getting buildings and just getting God's supernatural business plans for a lot of the things that we're doing. These days, I help and I coach church leaders in doing the same. Why? Because every church has a unique DNA, and every church needs to hear specifically from God what their role is and the role that they're called to play in city and national transformation. Essentially, I think the major thing that God has been trying to teach us as a city here in Amsterdam is that we can't do it on our own. We really have to try to work together now. And not just try to work together, we need to work together. We need to focus on what we have in common and put aside our differences. Why? Because it's for the sake of the city. It's for the fame of his name in this city. And I think that's the biggest thing we've learned. In the past, you had unity efforts, for example, that made people think, all right, in order to be unified, I have to avoid praying in tongues if there are those who don't believe in it because it makes them feel uncomfortable. I think we've gotten to the point right now, especially after Corona, where we realize we will all have different expressions of how we worship. Let the ones who pray in tongues do that. Let the ones who believe in silence do that. Don't try to hem them in, but we're to come together around the name of Christ and to see him exalted in the city. And I see that that is a major change that has happened in the last 5 years. Corona has caused us to realize that the way that we've been doing things, just focusing on being church isn't working. It hasn't worked before, but it's certainly not going to work now. And so I think one of the biggest positive things that has come out of that and changes is that people realize now we have to do things differently. We've got to get our church members out into society and help them while they're doing that. The scriptures say, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. The Lord's saying, if my people, he's not talking about those who don't know him, but he's talking about if my people who are called by my name. And so for every single spiritual leader, including myself, one of the key mandates that we have is to see the spiritual climate in our cities changed. And God gives us a key: prayer.